Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into a world where the sun disappears for months and the ice doesn't just surround you, it swallows you whole. You're about to live through one of the most brutal survival stories in Arctic history. The Greely Expedition of 1881 to 1884. 25 men set out to plant the American flag in the farthest north to gather scientific data, to make history. Only 6 came home, and the things they did to survive, the choices they made in that frozen darkness, well, those haunt the history books to this day. Before we begin, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'm not going to guilt trip you over it. And drop your city and the time you're watching this down in the comments. I love knowing who's out there listening in these quiet hours. Now, dim the lights. Maybe light a candle for that soft glow. Let's walk together into the ice. You stand on the deck of the SS Proteus, and the wood beneath your boots is slick with salt spray. The year is 1881, and you're about to sail into a place where the sun disappears for 5 months straight. 24 other men surround you, their voices loud with excitement, their faces bright with the kind of confidence that comes from not knowing what's ahead. You probably won't survive this, but right now, in the summer warmth of St. John's, Newfoundland, that truth feels impossible. The ship rocks gently as the crew loads the last crates of provisions. You smell tar and canvas, the sharp bite of rope fibres, the faint sweetness of preserved meat packed in barrels. Your commanding officer, First Lieutenant Adolphus Greely, stands near the bow with his notebook open, checking supplies against a list. He's 37, thin-faced, with the rigid posture of a man who survived the Civil War and never quite left the battlefield. He has no Arctic experience, neither do you. Neither does anyone else aboard except the ship's crew, who will leave you behind her in mine and sail home before winter traps the ice. Listen to the gulls crying overhead, the creak of the mast as wind fills the sails. Your wool uniform scratches against your neck. It's July and the air is warm, but you've been issued fur-lined parkas and sealskin boots that sit in your pack below deck. You'll need them soon enough. The plan sounds simple. Sail north to Lady Franklin Bay on Ellesmere Island, establish a scientific station called Fort Conger, collect weather data for 2 years, and wait for supply ships to bring fresh provisions each summer. When your time is up, you'll sail home as heroes, your names recorded in the history of polar science. But plans have a way of collapsing in places where the temperature drops to 60 below zero. You watch the shoreline of Newfoundland shrink behind you as the Proteus pushes into open water. The other men joke and smoke pipes, their laughter carrying across the deck. Some of them are cavalry soldiers from the western plains, more familiar with dust and tumbleweeds than ice and darkness. They signed up for adventure pay, for the chance to be part of something important. The first International Polar Year is a grand scientific effort. 11 nations working together to understand the planet's climate. You're part of that. You matter. That thought warms you more than the summer sun. The voyage north takes weeks. The Proteus is a whaling ship, not an icebreaker, and it groans and shudders as it pushes through fields of pack ice. You lean against the rail and watch icebergs drift past, their surfaces glowing pale blue in the endless Arctic daylight. The air grows colder. You pull on layers, feeling the weight of wool and fur against your body. The sea smells different here, clean and metallic, like the inside of a freezer before anything spoils. At night, which isn't really night because the sun barely dips below the horizon, you lie in your hammock below deck and listen to the hull creak under the pressure of ice. You're not afraid yet. Excitement still outweighs worry. This is the adventure you wanted. On August 11th, the Proteus reaches Lady Franklin Bay. You gather on deck with the others and stare at the barren coastline of Ellesmere Island. There are no trees here, no grass, just rock and ice stretching endlessly in every direction. The wind bites your face even through your beard. You taste salt and cold on your lips. Someone mutters that it looks like the end of the world. He's not wrong. The crew unload supplies onto the rocky shore. Lumber for building, barrels of salted pork and hardtack, scientific instruments packed in straw, coal for heating, canned goods stacked in wooden crates. You help carry it all, your breath steaming in the frigid air, your muscles burning from the effort. The Proteus will leave soon, before ice locks it in for the winter. After that, you'll be alone. Fort Conger rises slowly over the next few weeks. It's a simple wooden structure, more like a large cabin than a fort, with bunks lining the walls and a central stove for heat. You hammer nails into frozen planks, your hands stiff inside gloves, the sound echoing across the empty landscape. At night, you collapse into your bunk, exhausted, and listen to the wind howl outside. It never stops howling. That wind will become the soundtrack of your life here, a constant low moan that seeps into your dreams. By early September, the Proteus is gone. You watch it disappear over the horizon, sails bright against the grey sky, and suddenly the Arctic feels much larger. You're 800 miles from the nearest settlement. There's no telegraph line, no way to communicate with the outside world. If something goes wrong, you'll have to solve it yourselves, but nothing will go wrong. Lieutenant Greely has a plan. The US Army Signal Corps has a plan. Supply ships will come next summer and the summer after that. You'll collect your weather data, conduct your scientific observations, and return home with valuable knowledge. It's all very organised. You settle into a routine. Every day you take meteorological readings, temperature, wind speed, barometric pressure. You record the data in neat columns in leather-bound journals. The scientist among you, Edward Israel, studies the stars and maps magnetic variations. Photographer George Rice captures images of the landscape, his camera heavy and slow in the cold. You learn to dress in layers, to move carefully so you don't sweat and freeze, to watch for frostbite on your fingertips and nose. The sun begins to set earlier each day. By late October it dips below the horizon and doesn't come back. Darkness settles over Fort Conger like a thick blanket, and the temperature plummets. You light oil lamps and huddle near the stove, burning precious coal to keep the interior barely above freezing. Outside, the wind screams and the ice cracks with sounds like cannon fire. You play cards by lamplight, read books until the pages blur, and try not to think about how long 5 months of darkness really is. Listen to the crackle of the stove, the shuffle of cards, the quiet murmur of men trying to fill the silence. The darkness presses against the windows. You can feel it waiting. Winter in the Arctic isn't just cold, it's a kind of cold that makes your lungs ache, that turns your breath into ice crystals on your beard, that seeps through every layer of clothing and settles deep in your bones. You step outside for a moment, just to check the thermometer, and the air hits you like a physical force. 57 degrees below zero, your eyelashes freeze together, the inside of your nose stings. You hurry back inside, shaking, and press close to the stove until feeling returns to your fingers. But there are moments of beauty too. The Aurora Borealis dances across the sky in curtains of green and purple light, shimmering and shifting like living things. You stand in the doorway of Fort Conger, wrapped in furs, and watch the lights move. They're silent, but you imagine you can hear them, a faint crackling hum just at the edge of perception. For a few minutes the cold doesn't matter. The isolation doesn't matter. You're witnessing something ancient and vast, and it fills you with a strange, quiet awe. Spring arrives slowly. The sun returns in February, a pale sliver on the horizon that grows a little larger each day. You feel its warmth on your face, weak and distant, but warmth nonetheless. Hope stirs. You've survived the worst of it. Now you just have to wait for the supply ship. In May, Lieutenant Greely organises an expedition to push further north. Sergeant David Brainard and Lieutenant James Lockwood take a small team, a dog sled, and provisions for a 2-week journey. Their goal is to break the record for the furthest point north ever reached by humans. You watch them leave, tiny figures against the endless white, and wonder if you'll see them again. They return 3 weeks later, exhausted but triumphant. They've reached 83 degrees, 23 minutes north, further than anyone has ever been. It's a victory, a moment of pride. You celebrate with extra rations and hear Brainard describe the journey. The brutal cold, the treacherous ice, the way the landscape seemed to go on forever without change. He talks about staring at the horizon and realising there's nothing beyond it. Just more ice, more cold, more emptiness. You file that information away. It will matter later when you're forced to travel south through that same emptiness with no supplies and no hope. But for now, summer is here. The ice begins to break up. You watch for the supply ship scanning the horizon every day. It should arrive in July or August, bringing fresh food, mail from home, news of the outside world. You dream about letters, about hearing your name called when the mailbag is opened. You imagine the taste of fresh bread, the crunch of an apple, The simple luxury of something that isn't salted meat or hardtack. August passes. No ship. September comes, and the ice begins to reform. Still no ship. By October, the supply ship isn't coming. Lieutenant Greely calls a meeting. His face is pale, his voice steady but strained. The ship must have been blocked by ice. It happens sometimes. Next summer, they'll send 2 ships to make up for it. There's enough food to last until then if you're careful. You'll have to ration, but you'll be fine. You want to believe him. You need to believe him, so you do. The second winter begins, and this time the darkness feels heavier. The second winter at Fort Conger changes something fundamental inside you. It's not just the cold this time, or the endless night. It's the silence between the men, the way conversations trail off into nothing, the way laughter sounds forced and hollow. You're all thinking the same thing, but nobody says it out loud. The supply ship failed. What if it fails again? You wake in your bunk and the air is so cold you can see your breath in thick clouds even inside the fort. The stove burns low to conserve coal. Your joints ache from the chill. You pull on layer after layer of clothing, each piece stiff and scratchy, and step outside to take the morning weather readings. The thermometer shows 48 below. The wind cuts through your furs like they're made of paper. You scribble the numbers in the logbook with hands that shake from more than just cold, then retreat back inside. Breakfast is a thin portion of hardtack softened in hot water, and a strip of salted pork so tough it hurts your jaw to chew. You eat slowly, trying to make it last, trying to trick your stomach into feeling full. It doesn't work. Hunger becomes your constant companion, a low gnawing ache that never quite goes away. Lieutenant Greely has cut rations to make the supplies stretch. You're eating less than half of what you need, and your body knows it. The days blur together. You take readings, record data, sit by the stove and stare at nothing. Some of the men play cards, but the games lack energy. Others read the same books over and over, their eyes glazing over the familiar words. A few write letters home, even though there's no way to send them. You try that once, sitting with a pencil and paper, trying to explain what this feels like, but the words don't come. How do you describe the way darkness presses on your mind? How do you explain the strange, creeping fear that you'll never see sunlight again? Listen to the wind outside, a constant moan that never stops. It's been blowing for 3 days straight, a blizzard that piles snow against the walls until you have to dig out the door just to step outside. The sound of it seeps into everything, into your thoughts, into your dreams. You lie awake at night and listen to it howl, and it sounds almost like voices, like something out there is calling your name. You're losing weight. Everyone is. You can see it in the hollow cheeks, the way uniforms hang loose on frames that used to fill them. Your belt has the new notches punched into it. Each one a marker of how much you've shrunk. When you catch your reflection in a piece of polished metal, you barely recognise yourself. Your eyes look too large in your thin face, your skin stretched tight over bones. By January, the cold reaches its peak. 62 degrees below zero. You step outside for just a moment and the air burns your lungs. Your breath freezes instantly, creating a cloud of ice crystals that hangs in front of your face. You touch the metal door handle with your bare hand for just a second, and your skin sticks to it. You pull away, leaving behind a layer of skin, and blood wells up in the cold. It freezes almost immediately. Inside, tempers fray. Arguments break out over small things: who sat too close to the stove, who took more than their share of coal, who's shirking their duties. Lieutenant Greely tries to maintain discipline, but his authority feels thin. He's just another starving man trapped in the dark. Dr. Octave Pavey, the expedition's physician and naturalist, openly challenges Greely's decisions. There are whispers of mutiny, though nothing comes of it. Not yet. You try to stay out of it. You do your job, keep your head down, and wait for spring. The sun returns in late February, a pale sliver of light that feels like a miracle. You stand outside and let it touch your face, weak and cold as it is, and something inside you unclenches slightly. Light. Warmth. The world hasn't ended. Not yet. As the days lengthen, hope returns with them. The supply ship will come this year. It has to. 2 failures in a row would be unthinkable. The United States government wouldn't abandon its men. You cling to that thought like a lifeline. By July, you're scanning the horizon constantly, watching for the dark shape of a ship cutting through the ice. Every day that passes without it feels like a betrayal. Your rations are almost gone. The remaining food is mouldy, stale, barely edible. You're eating 6 ounces a day now when a man needs at least 30 to survive. Your body is consuming itself, burning muscle for fuel, shutting down non-essential functions to keep your heart beating. August arrives. The ice breaks up, the water is clear. A ship could come now, it could sail right up to the shore, but none does. On August 9th, Lieutenant Greely calls everyone together. His face is grey, his voice barely above a whisper. The supply ship isn't coming. You have to evacuate. The orders are clear. If no resupply arrives by this date, abandon Fort Conger and retreat south to Cape Sabine, where emergency caches of food should be waiting. From there, rescue ships will find you. You pack what you can carry, scientific instruments, journals, a few personal items. Everything else stays behind. Fort Conger, the place that's been your home for 2 years, will be left to the ice. You take one last look at the interior, the bunks where you slept, the stove that kept you alive, the table where you played cards and tried to forget where you were. Then you step outside and don't look back. The retreat south is a nightmare. You travel in small boats, rowing through channels of open water, dragging the boats over ice when the water ends. The boats are overloaded, sitting low in the freezing water, and every wave that crashes over the side soaks you to the skin. The cold water is worse than the air. It saps your strength instantly, turning your muscles to lead. You row until your hands blister and bleed, until your shoulders scream in agony, and then you row some more. The landscape slides past, endlessly the same. Ice and rock and grey water. You lose track of time, days blend into each other. You sleep when you can, huddled under a tarp in the bottom of the boat, shivering so hard your teeth crack together. The little food you have left is divided into portions so small they're barely worth eating. A spoonful of pemmican, a piece of hardtack the size of your thumb. It's not enough, it will never be enough. One of the boats gets trapped in the ice. You abandon it, transferring supplies and men to the remaining boats, and keep moving. The weight makes the boats even slower, even more dangerous. Water sloshes around your feet. Your boots are soaked. Your toes are numb. September comes, and with it, the first storms of autumn. The wind whips the water into a frenzy. Waves toss the boats like toys. You bail frantically, scooping out water with your hands, with tin cups, with anything you can find. If the boat swamps, you'll die in minutes. The water is cold enough to stop your heart. One night, the wind pushes you onto an ice floe. You have no choice but to camp there, unloading the boats and huddling together on the frozen surface. The ice shifts beneath you, cracking and groaning, and you lie awake listening to it, wondering if it will split apart and dump you, all into the sea. The Aurora dances overhead, green and purple light swirling in the darkness, beautiful and indifferent. You're just a speck of life on a frozen rock, and the universe doesn't care if you survive or not. 51 days after leaving Fort Conger, you reach Cape Sabine. It's a barren, desolate place, just rock and ice and howling wind. But there should be food here. Emergency caches left by the supply ships. Enough to keep you alive until rescue comes. You search the shoreline, desperate, and find a small pile of crates half buried in snow. Your heart leaps. You pry them open with shaking hands. Inside, there's enough food for 40 days. Maybe, if you stretch it, if you're lucky. There are 25 of you. You do the math in your head, and the numbers don't work. They don't come close to working. Winter is coming. Rescue won't arrive until next summer, 8 months away. You have food for 40 days. You look around at the other men, their hollow eyes and skeletal frames, and you know. Most of you won't see spring. This is where the real dying begins. You build a shelter from what you can find. An overturned boat, stones piled into rough walls, a canvas tarp stretched over the top. It's not a house, it's barely a windbreak, but it's all you have. The men christen it Camp Clay, and the name sticks, though there's nothing about it that suggests permanence or safety. There's a tomb waiting to be filled. The interior is dark and cramped. 25 men packed into a space meant for maybe 10. You lie on the frozen ground, shoulder to shoulder with the others, and try to conserve body heat. The smell is overwhelming. Unwashed bodies, damp wool, the sour tang of fear sweat. There's no privacy, no space to be alone, no escape from the closeness of other starving men. You ration the food carefully, but careful doesn't mean enough. Each man gets a tiny portion, a few ounces of bread, a sliver of canned meat, sometimes a spoonful of seal oil that makes you gag but provides precious calories. You eat slowly, chewing each bite until it dissolves in your mouth, trying to make your body believe it's more than it is. Your stomach cramps with hunger, a constant twisting pain that never stops. Listen to the wind outside battering the canvas. Feel the cold seeping up through the ground, through your layers, into your bones. Taste the salt and grit on your lips from the seal oil. This is survival stripped to its thinnest edge. As October slides into November, the Arctic winter closes in. The temperature drops to 40 below, then 50, then lower. The darkness returns, swallowing the world. You huddle in the shelter and listen to the men around you breathe, each exhale visible as a cloud of steam in the dim light of a single candle. You're burning seal blubber for light now, and the smoke makes your eyes water, your throat raw. The first man dies in early January. Private Henry, not the one who'll be executed later, but another Henry, a quiet man who stopped eating days ago. He just lies down one night and doesn't wake up. His body is stiff by morning, frozen solid in the position he died in. You drag him outside and lay him on the rocks. There's no way to bury him. The ground is frozen iron hard. He'll stay there, preserved by the cold until spring, if spring ever comes. More men follow, one every week, then one every few days. Scurvy ravages you, turning your gums black and spongy, making your teeth loosen in their sockets. Old wounds reopen and won't heal. Bruises appear on your skin for no reason, spreading in dark purple blotches. Your joints swell and ache. Every movement is agony. Frostbite takes fingers and toes. One man, Ellison, loses his hands and feet to the cold. He lies in the shelter, helpless, while others feed him and tend him as best they can. There's nothing to amputate with, no anaesthetic to dull the pain. He just suffers day after day, his stumps wrapped in filthy cloth waiting to die. You eat things you never imagined eating. Sealskin boiled until it's soft enough to chew. Lichen scraped from rocks, bitter and slimy. Boots cut into strips and stewed until they're barely edible. The leather tastes like death, but it fills your stomach, and that's all that matters. You drink water melted from ice, and it tastes of salt and minerals, and the faint metallic tang of something wrong. Hunger does strange things to your mind. You dream about food constantly. Not fancy meals, not feasts, just simple things, bread and butter, a boiled potato, a cup of milk. You wake up convinced you can smell bacon cooking, and the disappointment when you realise it's just a dream is crushing. Some men talk in their sleep, describing meals in vivid detail, and you listen to them with a mixture of longing and rage. Lieutenant Greely tries to maintain discipline. He keeps a journal, records the deaths, enforces the rationing schedule. But his authority is slipping. Men steal food, sneaking morsels from the communal supplies and hiding them. It's impossible to know who, but everyone suspects everyone. Trust dissolves. You watch the other men when they think you're not looking, wondering if they're the thief, wondering if you're next. In June, the thefts reach a breaking point. A man named Charles Henry is caught red-handed with extra food. He's done it multiple times, stealing while others starve. Lieutenant Greely holds a trial, if you can call it that. There's no jury, no defence attorney, just Greely's judgment. The verdict is clear. Henry must be executed for the good of the group, to prevent others from stealing, to maintain order. You watch as they take Henry outside. You hear the gunshot, a single crack that echoes across the barren rocks. Then silence. Another body for the pile. You tell yourself it was necessary, that without discipline you'll all die. But late at night, when the wind howls and the darkness presses close, you wonder if you're still human, if any of you are. By this point the food is completely gone. You're eating moss, seaweed, anything you can scrape up. Some men boil pieces of seal hide over and over, extracting every last bit of nutrition until the hide is nothing but transparent slime. It makes you vomit, but you eat it anyway because the alternative is death. Your body is shutting down. You can feel it happening, piece by piece. Your muscles waste away, leaving you so weak you can barely stand. Your heart beats irregularly, skipping and fluttering in your chest. Your vision blurs. Simple tasks like sitting up or crawling to the latrine become monumental efforts. You rest after every movement, gasping, your heart pounding. The men around you are no better. They're skeletal, their skin stretched tight over bones, their eyes sunken deep in their sockets. Some have stopped moving entirely, just lying in the shelter, staring at nothing, waiting for the end. Others mutter to themselves, lost in delirium, their minds broken by hunger and cold and isolation. You wonder if rescue will ever come. You've been waiting for so long. Surely someone is looking for you. Surely the government hasn't forgotten. But doubt gnaws at you. What if they think you're all dead? What if they decided you're not worth the effort? What if the ice is too thick, the distance too far, the risk too great? You lie in the shelter and listen to the wind, and you think about dying. Not in a dramatic way, not with fear or anger, just a quiet acceptance. If death comes, it comes. You're too tired to fight it anymore. But somewhere deep inside, a stubborn part of you refuses to give up. You've survived this long. You've endured things that should have killed you. You're still breathing. That has to count for something. Spring returns slowly. The sun climbs higher each day. The ice begins to melt. You drag yourself outside and sit in the weak sunlight, letting it touch your face. It doesn't warm you, not really, but it's something. A promise. A reminder that the world still exists beyond this frozen hell. In late June, one of the men spots something on the horizon. A ship. You don't believe it at first. You've had hallucinations before, seen things that weren't there, but others see it too. A dark shape moving through the water, growing larger. Rescue. The ship is called the Bear, and it's commanded by Captain Winfield Scott Schley. When his crew finds you, they're horrified. You're unrecognisable as humans, more like corpses that haven't quite finished dying. 6 of you are still alive, barely. 19 bodies lie scattered around Camp Clay, frozen and partially mutilated. There are rumours, whispers of cannibalism, of flesh stripped from bones. No one admits to anything. No one has to. The evidence is there. You're carried onto the ship, too weak to walk. They feed you slowly, carefully, because your stomach can't handle real food after so long. You sip broth and feel it burn in your throat, and you cry, not from pain but from relief. You're alive. Against all odds, against every logical expectation, you survived. The voyage home takes weeks. One of the 6 dies on the way, his body finally giving out. The rest of you cling to life with the same stubborn determination that got you this far. You reach Newfoundland and then the United States, and the news of your rescue spreads like wildfire. You're a hero, a survivor, someone who faced the worst the Arctic could offer and lived to tell about it. But late at night, when you close your eyes, you're back at Camp Clay. You smell the seal oil and unwashed bodies. You hear the wind howling. You feel the gnawing hunger in your belly and the cold in your bones. You survived, but part of you is still there, frozen on those rocks, waiting for rescue that came too late for most, and you'll never be warm again. The wind never stops at Cape Sabine. That's the first thing that breaks you down, even before the hunger, even before the cold. It's relentless, a constant roar that batters the canvas walls of your shelter and finds every gap, every weak spot, every place where cold can seep in. You lie on the frozen ground wrapped in whatever you can find, and the wind pulls the heat from your body like a thief, leaving you shivering so hard your muscles ache. February turns into March, and the darkness begins to lift, but the cold doesn't ease. If anything, it gets worse. Clear skies mean plummeting temperatures. You step outside one morning to empty the waste bucket, and the air is so cold it feels like broken glass in your lungs. 70 below zero, someone says, though the thermometer is broken and no one really knows anymore. Numbers don't matter. Cold is cold, and this cold wants to kill you. Your body is failing in ways you never imagined. Your fingers are black at the tips, the flesh dead from frostbite. You can't feel them anymore, which is both a blessing and a curse. No pain, but also no ability to grip things, to tie knots, to do even the simplest tasks. Other men are worse off. Ellison's hands and feet are completely gone now, just bandaged stumps that weep fluid. He moans constantly, a low sound that you try to ignore because there's nothing you can do for him. Food is a distant memory. You're eating things that would have made you wretch back when you were a whole person, back when your body still had standards. Seaweed boiled into a grey slime, pieces of canvas chewed until they soften. the leather straps from equipment, cut into tiny squares and stewed until they're rubbery and foul-tasting, but technically edible. You swallow them and try not to think about what you're doing. Listen to the sound of chewing all around you in the shelter, the wet smacking of mouths working on things that aren't food. Someone gags and vomits, and the smell fills the small space. No one has the energy to clean it up, it just freezes there, adding to the layers of filth that coat everything. Your mind starts to slip, not all at once, not in a dramatic break, but in small ways that accumulate. You forget things, simple things. Someone asks you a question, and you stare at them, the words meaningless sounds. You start sentences and lose track of what you were saying halfway through. Days blur together. You're not sure what month it is anymore, or how long you've been here. Time becomes elastic, stretching and compressing in ways that don't make sense. Dreams and waking blend together. You have conversations with people who aren't there. Your mother appears in the shelter, solid and real, and tells you dinner is ready. You stand up to follow her and nearly collapse because your legs won't hold you. The other men don't react. They're having their own hallucinations, their own visits from ghosts. In March, another young man dies, Corporal Salor. He's been quiet for days, just lying in his spot staring at the canvas ceiling. One morning he doesn't respond when someone speaks to him. He's gone. His eyes are still open, but there's nothing behind them. You help drag his body outside and add it to the others. The pile is growing. Soon there will be more dead than alive. You notice something about the bodies as you arrange them. Some of them look different. Thinner. Certain parts missing. You don't think about it too hard. You can't afford to think about it. If you let yourself understand what that means, what some of the men might be doing when no one's watching, you'll break completely. The ice begins to crack in April. Loud booms that sound like thunder. It's the first sign that winter might actually end, that the world might thaw and allow ships to reach you. But April also brings storms, blizzards that bury the shelter in snow and trap you inside for days at a time. The air inside becomes thick and foul, full of the smell of unwashed bodies and sickness. You breathe through your mouth to avoid tasting it, but that just makes your throat drier, your cough worse. Scurvy is rampant now. Your gums are swollen and black, bleeding at the slightest touch. Your teeth feel loose. When you run your tongue over them, they shift in their sockets. One man's teeth fall out completely, just drop from his mouth like pebbles. He can't chew anymore, can only swallow whatever soft mush someone prepares for him. He starves faster after that. Your joints are swollen, hot and painful. Your knees and elbows look grotesque, bulging under your thin skin. Every movement sends sharp pain shooting through your body. You lie still as much as possible, conserving energy, waiting for the pain to dull enough that you can function. It never really does. Lieutenant Greely keeps a journal, writing in it every day despite his own failing health. You watch him scratch words onto paper with fingers that barely work, his handwriting shaky and uneven. He's documenting everything. The deaths, the weather, the rations. Maybe he thinks someone will read it. Someday. Maybe he thinks it matters. You're not sure anything matters anymore. In May, the tension in the shelter reaches a breaking point. Food theft has been an ongoing problem, but now it's constant. Someone is stealing from the communal supply every night, taking more than their share, and it's killing the others faster. Lieutenant Greely calls a meeting. His voice is weak, barely audible over the wind, but his eyes are hard and the thief must be caught. The thief must be stopped, or you'll all die. You look around at the other men, at their hollow faces and skeletal frames, and you see the suspicion in their eyes. No one trusts anyone. You don't even trust yourself. What would you do if you had the chance to steal food? Would you take it? Would you let someone else starve so you could have an extra bite? You hope you wouldn't. But hunger makes people do things they never thought possible. Charles Henry is caught stealing again. This time there's no doubt, no room for mercy. Greely announces the sentence, "Execution is the only way to maintain order," he says. "The only way to ensure the rest of you have a chance." Henry begs. He pleads for his life. He promises he won't do it again. But his promises mean nothing. He's already done it too many times. Trust is gone. They take him outside. You don't watch. You can't. You sit in the shelter with your hands over your ears, but you still hear it. The gunshot echoes across the barren landscape, final and absolute. When they come back inside, no one speaks. The wind howls, that's all. June arrives, and with it, the hope of rescue. The ice is breaking up. Ships can move now. Someone will come. They have to. But Days pass, then weeks, and no ship appears. You're down to 5 or 6 men who can still move. The others are too weak, too far gone. They lie in the shelter like corpses waiting to be official. Ellison is still alive somehow, despite his missing limbs and infected wounds. He moans softly, a sound that's become background noise. You're numb to it now, numb to all of it. Your own body is shutting down. You know the signs, your heart flutters irregularly, your vision fades in and out. Simple tasks like sitting up leave you gasping. You're not sure how much longer you can hold on. One morning someone shouts, "A ship. There's a ship on the horizon. You don't believe it. You've hallucinated before. But others see it too. It's real. It's coming. The ship is called the Bear, and it carries men who look healthy, who look alive. They reach the shore and stare at you in horror. You try to stand to greet them, but your legs won't hold you. You collapse onto the rocks, and someone catches you before you hit. You're saved, but you're not sure there's enough left of you to save. They carry you onto the Bear because you cannot walk. Your legs are sticks wrapped in skin, and the muscles eaten away by months of starvation. When the sailors lift you, you weigh almost nothing less than that 100 pounds for a man who once tipped the scales at 160. You feel their hands through your clothes, gentle but horrified, and you wonder what you look like to them. A skeleton with eyes. A ghost given temporary flesh. The ship's deck is solid beneath you, and that solidity feels alien. You've spent so long on ice and rock, on surfaces that shift and crack, that the steady planks of the Bear feel wrong. Your balance is gone. When they set you down on a bench, you sway and nearly fall. Someone steadies you. Their grip firm but careful, like you're made of glass. The crew stares. They can't help it. You and the other 5 survivors look like something from a nightmare. Skin stretched tight over bones. Eyes sunken deep. Beards matted and filthy. Clothes hanging in rags. Frostbite has turned extremities black. Open sores weep through bandages. The smell of infection and rot clings to you. Captain Schley approaches, and you try to speak, to report, to explain. But the words stick in your throat. You've barely talked in weeks, your voice unused. When sound finally comes out, it's a croak, barely human. He tells you not to try, that you're safe now, that everything will be all right. You want to believe him, but all right is a concept that belongs to another world. A world you're not sure you're part of anymore. They take you below deck to a cabin that's been prepared. There are beds, real beds with mattresses and blankets. You lie down, and the softness feels like torture. Your body is so used to frozen ground that the give of the mattress makes your spine ache. You shift, trying to find a position that doesn't hurt, but everything hurts. Your joints, your muscles, your bones, even your skin hurts, raw and sensitive from months of cold and filth. The ship's doctor examines you. His hands are gentle, but every touch makes you flinch. He listens to your heart, and you see the worry in his eyes. He checks your gums, your skin, the frostbitten tissue on your fingers and toes. He doesn't say much, just writes notes in a ledger and tells you to rest. You know what that means. You're dying, just slower now. They feed you broth, not real food because your stomach can't handle it yet. Just warm liquid with a hint of salt and fat. You sip it slowly, and it burns going down, your throat raw and damaged. But it's warm. That's the important thing. Warmth spreading through your body, reaching places that have been cold for so long you forgot what warmth felt like. You cry, you can't help it. Tears run down your face and you don't even try to stop them. One of the sailors sees and looks away, giving you privacy. But there's no privacy on a ship, not really. Everyone knows you're breaking down. Everyone knows you're held together by the thinnest thread. Listen to the creak of the ship. The sound of water against the hull, the distant calls of the crew as they work. These are normal sounds, human sounds, and they're almost painful in their normalcy. You've spent so long in the silent, howling emptiness of the Arctic that the noise of life overwhelms you. The voyage south takes days. The Bear pushes through ice fields and open water, heading for Newfoundland and civilization. You spend most of the time in the cabin, drifting in and out of consciousness. Sleep and waking blur together. Sometimes you're on the ship. Sometimes you're back at Camp Clay, feeling the wind tear at the canvas walls. The transitions are seamless. You're not sure which is real. One of the survivors dies during the journey. Ellison, the man with no hands or feet. He simply stops breathing one night, his body finally giving up after enduring more than any human should have to endure. They wrap him in canvas and prepare him for burial at sea. You watch from your bunk as they carry him past and you feel nothing. No grief, no sadness, just emptiness. You've seen too much death. It doesn't register anymore. The doctor increases your rations slowly. A little more broth, then some bread soaked until it's soft. Your stomach cramps with every meal, your body confused by the presence of actual nutrition. You spend hours curled around the pain, wondering if eating will kill you after you've survived starvation. But gradually your body remembers. It remembers how to digest food, how to pull nutrients from it, how to start the long, painful process of rebuilding. You gain a pound, then 2. It's not much, not nearly enough, but it's progress. You're not dying quite as fast. The ship reaches Newfoundland in July. News of your rescue has spread and a crowd gathers at the dock. Reporters with notepads, photographers with cameras, families of the dead waiting for confirmation. You're carried off the ship on a stretcher, and the crowd's noise hits you like a physical force. Shouting, questions, the click and flash of cameras. You close your eyes and try to block it out. They take you to a hospital. Clean white sheets, a real bed. Nurses who move efficiently through the ward, changing bandages, administering medicines, checking vital signs. You lie in the bed and stare at the ceiling, and it feels surreal. This place is too bright, too clean, too full of people who aren't dying. You don't belong here. The newspapers call you a hero. They write about your ordeal, about the months of starvation and cold, about the men who died. They talk about courage and endurance and the indomitable human spirit. You read the articles someone brings you and the words feel meaningless. They're talking about someone else, not you. There are other stories too, darker ones. Rumours of cannibalism, whispers about the bodies at Camp Clay, about the missing flesh, about what desperate men do when all other options are gone. Reporters ask you about it, their voices hushed, their eyes eager for scandal. You say nothing. What could you say? You were there, but memory is mercurial. You remember hunger, you remember cold, the rest is fragments, pieces that don't quite fit together. Lieutenant Greely faces the worst of it. The newspapers vilify him, call him a murderer for executing Henry, question his leadership. He defends his decisions in interviews, his voice tired, his eyes haunted. You don't know if he made the right choices. You're not sure there were any right choices. You just know you survived, and 19 men didn't. Recovery is slow. Your body heals, but your mind struggles. You have nightmares every night, vivid dreams where you're back at Camp Clay, back in the darkness and cold. You wake up screaming, and the nurses come running, their voices soothing, their hands gentle. But the terror doesn't fade. It's always there, lurking just beneath the surface. You gain weight gradually. 10 pounds, 20, eventually 40. You start to look human again, though you'll never be the man you were before. Frostbite took parts of your fingers and toes. The doctors amputate what can't be saved, clean cuts in a sterile room that feel like a violation. But it's necessary. The dead tissue will rot otherwise, will poison your blood and kill you. Physical therapy is agony. Learning to walk again, to use your hands, to perform basic tasks. Everything is harder now, your balance is off, your strength is gone. Simple things like buttoning a shirt or holding a fork take intense concentration. But you persist, because the alternative is giving up, and you didn't survive the Arctic just to give up now. Months pass, you're discharged from the hospital, given a small pension and sent back into the world. You're expected to move on, to resume your life as if the last 3 years never happened. But how do you move on from something like that? How do you live in a world that feels impossibly soft and safe when you know what the real world is like? When you've seen the edge of human endurance and fallen off it? You try. You find a job, a small apartment. You go through the motions of normal life, but you're hollow inside, a shell of the person you used to be. Food tastes like ash. Warmth doesn't reach you. You lie in your bed at night with blankets piled high and you're still cold. Other survivors struggle too. Some turn to drink, trying to drown the memories. Others withdraw completely, unable to face the world. A few manage to rebuild, to find meaning in what they survived. You're not sure which category you fall into yet. Lieutenant Greely is eventually promoted, his reputation rehabilitated by time and the recognition that he made impossible decisions in an impossible situation. The scientific data you collected is studied and praised. The expedition is deemed a success, despite the cost. You find that absurd. 19 men dead, and they call it a success. But history doesn't care about individuals, it cares about results. And the results say you pushed the boundaries of human knowledge, that you endured where others would have failed, that you survived. You just wish surviving didn't feel so much like dying. Let's go back to when hope still lived. Before Camp Clay, before the hunger gnawed you hollow, before you learned what human flesh tastes like in whispered rumours you'll never confirm or deny. Back to Fort Conger in the autumn of 1881, when the mission still felt possible, when the Arctic seemed like an adventure rather than a death sentence. You arrive at Lady Franklin Bay in August, and the first thing you notice is the silence, not the absence of sound. There's wind, always wind, but the absence of human noise. No voices except your own crew, no dogs barking in the distance, no church bells or wagon wheels or any of the thousand small sounds that make up civilization. Just rock and ice and sky stretching endlessly in every direction. The Proteus unloads supplies onto the shore. Lumber, coal, barrels sussed out of salt pork, scientific instruments packed in straw, crates of ammunition, kerosene for the lamps. Everything you'll need to survive 2 years in this place. It seems like enough. More than enough. The crew works quickly, eager to finish before the ice thickens. They'll leave soon, and you'll stay behind. That thought sits in your stomach like a stone. Building Fort Conger takes weeks. You hammer frozen nails into frozen wood, your hands aching inside gloves that never seem thick enough. The structure rises slowly. Walls, roof, a central stove that will be the heart of your survival. You insulate the gaps with moss and cloth, trying to keep the cold out. It doesn't work, not really. The cold here isn't something you keep out, it's something you endure. Inside you arrange bunks along the walls, 2 tiers high. Officers get the lower bunks, enlisted men climb up top. It's a small privilege, but in a place where everything is equal hardship, small privileges matter. You store supplies in one corner, food, fuel, equipment. The scientific instruments get their own space, carefully protected from moisture and temperature extremes. Lieutenant Greely is meticulous about this. The science is why you're here. The science justifies the suffering. September brings the first real cold. 30 below, then 40. You learn to dress in layers. Wool long underwear, wool trousers, wool shirt, fur parka, sealskin boots. Even fully dressed, the cold finds you. It sneaks through seams and gaps, settles in your joints, makes your bones ache. You move carefully, because sweating in this cold can kill you. The moisture freezes against your skin, turning your clothes into armour made of ice. Daily life becomes routine. Wake before dawn, though dawn and dusk are increasingly meaningless as the days shorten. Stoke the stove, get the fire going. Check the thermometer outside, someone has to do it. And you take turns because no one wants to step into that cold more than necessary. Record the temperature, wind speed, barometric pressure. Write everything down in neat columns. Science marches on, even here at the edge of the world. Breakfast is salt pork and hardtack, coffee so strong it tastes like dirt, but at least it's hot. The warmth of the cup in your hands is worth more than the taste. You eat slowly, making it last, because there's nothing to do afterward except more work. Chop wood for the stove, haul water from a hole chopped in the ice, repair equipment damaged by the cold, check the supply inventory. Every task takes twice as long as it should, because your fingers are numb and your muscles are tight. Listen to the sounds of Fort Conger, the crackle of the fire, the scrape of pencils on paper, the quiet murmur of men talking. Someone plays a harmonica, the notes thin and lonely. Another man reads aloud from a book, and you listen to the story without really hearing it. The words are just sounds, a way to fill the silence. By October, the sun barely rises above the horizon. The world exists in perpetual twilight, everything shaded grey and blue. You watch the light fade day by day, minute by minute, and you feel something fade inside you, too. It's not fear, not exactly. More like a slow compression, a weight settling on your chest that makes breathing harder. The darkness finally arrives in late November. Total darkness. Not the darkness of a cloudy night, but the absence of light itself. You step outside with a lantern, and the pool of light around you feels like the only real thing in the universe. Beyond it, nothing. The sky is black, the ground is black, the horizon is gone. You could walk 5 steps and disappear completely, swallowed by the void. The men react differently to the darkness. Some adapt, finding comfort in routine and the close quarters of the fort. They play cards by lamplight. tell stories. Write letters home that won't be sent until summer. Others withdraw into themselves, silent and brooding. You see it in their eyes, a dullness that wasn't there before. The darkness is getting inside them. You handle it by staying busy. There's always work to do, always data to record, always equipment to maintain. You throw yourself into it, trying not to think about the fact that you won't see the sun for 4 months. Trying not to calculate how many days that is, how many hours, how many minutes of darkness you'll have to endure. December is the worst. The cold reaches 50 below, then 60. The darkness is absolute. The Aurora Borealis appears some nights, dancing across the sky in ribbons of green and purple light. It's beautiful, but the beauty feels alien, inhuman. This place wasn't meant for people. You're an intruder here, and the Arctic knows it. Inside Fort Conger, tempers fray and small arguments erupt over nothing. Whose turn it is to fetch water, who's sitting too close to the stove, who took the last of the coffee. Lieutenant Greely mediates, but his patience is wearing thin too. He's trying to maintain military discipline in a place where military discipline feels absurd. What does rank matter when you're all equally vulnerable to the cold? Dr. Pavey, the expedition's physician, becomes a particular problem. He's older than most of the crew, set in his ways, and he resents taking orders from Greely. He questions decisions openly, undermines authority with quiet comments. Other men start to side with him, forming a loose faction of discontent. You stay out of it. You've got enough problems without getting involved in politics. Food is still plentiful, at least. You eat well by polar standards, canned vegetables, preserved meat, dried fruit that reminds you of home. There's even chocolate, doled out in small squares as a treat. You let it melt on your tongue, savouring the sweetness, and for a moment you forget where you are. But the moment passes, it always passes, and you're back in the darkness, waiting for a sun that won't return until February. Christmas arrives and you try to celebrate. Someone fashions decorations from scraps, paper chains, drawings of holly. You pull extra rations for a special meal. Roast beef from a tin, canned peaches, bread that's only slightly stale. It's not much, but it's something. A reminder that you're still human, still capable of joy even in this place. You sing carols, your voice is rough and uncertain. Silent night. Oh, come all ye faithful. The words feel hollow in the darkness, but you sing them anyway. Someone proposes a toast, and you raise cups of rum, precious, carefully rationed rum, and drink to absent friends, to family back home, to the hope of seeing them again. That night, lying in your bunk, you think about your family. You picture them gathered around a fire, warm and safe, laughing. You wonder if they're thinking about you. You wonder if they have any idea what this is really like. Probably not. How could they? You didn't know, not really, until you lived it. January brings no relief. The cold deepens, the darkness continues. You mark each day on a calendar, a small ritual that gives structure to the formless time. One day closer to light, one day closer to the end of this. The Aurora appears again, brighter this time. You stand outside despite the cold, watching the lights dance. They move in waves, pulsing and shifting, and you hear a faint crackling sound. Maybe it's real, maybe it's your imagination, but standing there watching that impossible display, you feel something you haven't felt in weeks. Awe. This place may be trying to kill you, but it's also showing you things most people will never see, things that make the suffering almost worth it. Almost. February finally brings the first hint of light, a glow on the horizon, faint and tentative. The sun isn't back yet, but it's coming. You can feel it. The men's spirits lift. Conversations become more animated. Laughter returns, genuine this time. You've survived the worst of it. In March, the sun breaks over the horizon for the first time in months. You're outside when it happens, and the sight stops you cold. The light is weak, pale, nothing like the strong sun of summer, but it's light, real light. You watch it climb slowly, and something inside you unclenches. Spring is coming, summer will follow. The supply ship will arrive, bringing fresh food, mail, news from home. You've made it. The first winter is over. You allow yourself to hope. It's a dangerous thing, hope. It makes the fall so much harder when it comes. But right now, standing in the pale Arctic sunlight, you let yourself believe that everything will be all right. You have no idea how wrong you are. May arrives with temperatures that almost feel warm, 20 degrees above zero. You peel off layers feeling lighter, feeling almost human. The sun circles the sky now, never setting, and the constant daylight is disorienting after months of darkness. You sleep with cloths tied over your eyes to block the light, and even then you dream of brightness, of summer, of life returning to this frozen place. Lieutenant Greely calls a meeting. There's a plan, he announces, an opportunity to make history. The current record for farthest north, the closest any human has come to the North Pole, stands at 83 degrees, 7 minutes. It's been held by British explorers for decades, but with the right team, the right supplies and the right timing, that record can be broken. You can plant the American flag closer to the top of the world than anyone has ever been. He asks for volunteers. Sergeant David Brainard steps forward immediately. Lieutenant James Lockwood follows. Others raise their hands, eager for glory, for the chance to be part of something historic. You consider volunteering, feel the pull of it, but something holds you back. Maybe caution, maybe fear, maybe just exhaustion from the winter you've barely survived. You let others go. The expedition prepares over several weeks. They pack sledges with supplies, pemmican, biscuits, tea, fuel. They select the strongest dogs from the pack you brought from home. They test equipment, study maps, calculate distances. Every detail matters. This isn't a casual journey. It's a push into the unknown, into a place even more hostile than where you already are. You watch them depart on a clear morning in mid-May. 8 men, 3 sledges, 20 dogs. They head north across the ice, their figures growing smaller until they disappear into the white emptiness. You feel a strange mixture of relief and regret. Relief that you're not going. Regret that you're missing something important. Life at Fort Conger continues without them. The days are full of routine work, collecting weather data, repairing equipment, hunting for fresh meat. The hunting is mostly unsuccessful. The Arctic doesn't give up its resources easily. You shoot at birds and miss. You set traps for fox and catch nothing. Occasionally someone bags a seal or a small Arctic hare, and the fresh meat is divided carefully among everyone. It tastes like life itself after months of preserved food. You also watch for the supply ship. It should arrive in July or August, pushing through the broken ice to bring provisions and mail. You fantasize about letters from home, about news from the outside world. Has anything changed in the 2 years you've been gone? Has war broken out or peace been declared? Are your family members well? You won't know until the ship arrives. June passes slowly. The ice begins to break up, creating channels of dark water between the white floes. The sound of it is constant now. A grinding, cracking noise that echoes across the bay. You watch the water anxiously. Open water means a ship can reach you. Closed ice means isolation for another year. The expedition returns in early June, and you see them coming from a distance. They're different somehow, changed by what they have experienced. Thinner, harder, moving with the careful precision of men who've pushed themselves to the absolute limit. They reach Fort Conger and drop their packs, and for a moment no one speaks. Then Brainard grins. We did it. They broke the record, reached 83 degrees, 23 minutes, 52 seconds north, farther than any human has ever been. They saw things no one else has seen. Endless ice fields, pressure ridges as tall as buildings, the peculiar quality of light at the edge of the world. They nearly died doing it. One of the dogs collapsed and couldn't continue. Temperatures dropped so low that touching metal with bare skin meant leaving flesh behind. But they did it. The fort erupts in celebration. Extra rations are broken out. Someone produces a bottle of whiskey that's been saved for a special occasion, and you pass it around, each man taking a careful sip. The whiskey burns pleasantly, warming you from the inside. You toast the expedition, toast the record, toast America. For one night you're all heroes together. Listen to the laughter, the loud voices telling and retelling the story. Feel the warmth of the whiskey, the camaraderie, the sense of accomplishment. This is what you came for. This is what makes the suffering worth it. But the celebration doesn't last. Reality reasserts itself. You're still in the Arctic. You still need the supply ship to arrive, and as July approaches, you spend more and more time watching the ice, watching the horizon, waiting for the dark shape of a ship to appear. July comes, no ship. August arrives, still no ship. Lieutenant Greely tries to stay optimistic. The ice is thick this year, he says. The ship is delayed, but will come. Be patient. Keep working. Everything will be fine. But you see the worry in his eyes. You see the way he checks the supplies, calculating how long they'll last. The math isn't good. If no ship arrives this summer, you'll have to stretch your provision through another winter, and they weren't meant to last that long. The men's moods darken. Arguments become more frequent, more heated. The success of the Northern Expedition feels distant now, meaningless in the face of potential starvation. What good is a record if you die before anyone knows you achieved it? September brings the first freeze. The ice reforms across the bay, solid and impassable. The window for supply ships is closed. They're not coming this year. You'll have to survive another winter on reduced rations and hope that next summer brings relief. Greely calls another meeting. His face is grey, his voice steady but strained. He explains the situation. Rations will be cut. Everyone will go on half portions, maybe less. It'll be difficult but manageable. The human body can endure a lot. You've already proven that. You nod along with the others, but inside fear coils cold in your stomach. Half portions means being hungry all the time, means losing weight, losing strength, losing the ability to fight off cold and sickness. It means suffering through the darkness again, but this time weakened, vulnerable. The second winter begins, and it's immediately worse than the first. Hunger is a constant presence gnawing at your insides, making it hard to think about anything else. You measure your portions carefully, trying to make each bite last, trying to fool your body into feeling satisfied. It never works. You're always hungry. The darkness returns in November, swallowing the world. But this time it feels heavier, more oppressive. Maybe because you know what's coming. Maybe because you're weaker, less able to fight it. You lie in your bunk at night and listen to your stomach growl, and you think about food. Not fancy food, just food. Bread, potatoes, a thick stew with chunks of meat. Simple things that seem impossibly luxurious now. Christmas is grim. There are no extra rations for a celebration, no whiskey to toast with. You sing carols again, but they sound sad this time, like funeral dirges. Someone starts to cry halfway through Silent Night, and no one comments. You all pretend not to notice. The men are starting to turn on each other. Accusations fly. Someone took more than their share. Someone's cheating on the rations. Someone's hiding food. Greely investigates each claim, but there's never any proof. Just suspicion and anger, and hunger driving wedges between men who used to be friends. You keep your head down and endure. One day at a time, one meal at a time, one breath at a time. That's all you can do. By March, you're noticeably thinner. Everyone is. Your clothes hang loose, your face is gaunt, eyes sunken. You avoid mirrors. Not that there are many, because you don't want to see what you've become. But you're still alive, still functional. The science continues. You record weather data every day, even though your hands shake from weakness. You maintain the equipment, even though simple tasks leave you breathless. You do your job because giving up means dying, and you're not ready to die yet. Spring finally arrives. The sun returns, and with it, hope. This summer, the supply ship will come. It has to. To failure. In a row would be unthinkable. The government wouldn't abandon you. They'll send a ship, probably two, with enough supplies to make up for the missed year. You just have to hold on a little longer. April, May, June. You watch the ice break up, watch the water open, any day now. July, August. The water is clear, ships could easily reach you, but none do. By late August, the truth is unavoidable. The supply ships have failed again. You're on your own, and that's when Lieutenant Greely announces you have to leave. You have to abandon Fort Conger and retreat south to Cape Sabine, where emergency caches should be waiting. It's your only chance. You look around Fort Conger, at the place that's been your home for 2 years. You've survived here. You've made history here. But now you have to leave it behind and travel south into unknown dangers. You pack what you can carry, you load the boats, you take one last look at the fort knowing you'll never see it again. And then you set sail into disaster. The boats are overloaded from the start. That's the first mistake. Though calling it a mistake suggests there were better options, there weren't. You have to bring food, what little remains. You have to bring scientific instruments and journals. The records justify the expedition's existence. You have to bring personal items, because leaving them behind feels like accepting death. So the boats sit low in the water, barely a hand's width of freeboard between you and the freezing sea. 3 boats, 25 men, 250 miles of Arctic coastline to navigate before reaching Cape Sabine. The math seems simple until you factor in the ice, the weather, the fact that you're all half-starved and weakened from 2 years in this place. Then the math becomes something else entirely. You push off from the shore on August 9th, 883. The morning is grey and cold with a sharp wind blowing from the north. The water is choppy, dark, flecked with white foam. You grip your oar and pull, feeling your muscles protest. You're weaker than you thought. The oar feels heavy, the rhythm difficult to maintain, but you pull anyway, because stopping means drifting, and drifting means dying. The shoreline slides past slowly. Rock and ice and rock, an endless monotony broken occasionally by a glacier face or a jutting promontory. You've been staring at this landscape for 2 years, but seeing it from water level gives it a different character. The land looks hostile, uninhabitable, which it is. You've just been too busy surviving to notice. Listen to the splash of oars, the creak of the overloaded boats, the rasp of your own breathing. Taste salt spray on your lips mixed with the metallic tang of exhaustion. Your hands are already blistering from the oar, the skin rubbing away despite calluses built up over weeks of preparation. By tomorrow they'll be bleeding. Progress is slow, a few miles a day if you're lucky. The ice is unpredictable. Sometimes channels of open water stretch for miles and you make good time. Other times the ice closes in, forcing you to stop, unload the boats, drag them across the ice to the next patch of water, reload and continue. Each portage takes hours and saps your already depleted strength. At night you camp on ice floes or narrow beaches. There's no shelter, no trees for firewood, nothing but the boats turned upside down to provide minimal protection from the wind. You huddle underneath, trying to share body heat, trying to rest. Sleep is difficult. The cold seeps through your layers. The ice beneath you is hard and unforgiving. You drift in and out of consciousness, never quite sleeping, never quite awake. One morning you wake to find frost covering everything, the boats, your clothes, your beard. The moisture from your breath has frozen overnight, coating you in a thin layer of ice. You sit up and the ice cracks and falls away in sheets. Another man near you doesn't move. Someone shakes him. He's alive, barely, but he can't feel his feet. Frostbite. He won't be rowing today. The expedition continues. Greely pushes for as much progress as possible each day, knowing that winter is coming. Once the ice reforms and solidifies, travel will become impossible. You'll be stuck wherever you happen to be. Better to reach Cape Sabine before that happens, better to reach the emergency caches and relative safety. In early September, disaster strikes. One of the boats gets caught in an ice floe during the night. The ice shifts, grindings together with enormous force, and the boat is crushed. You hear it happen, a loud crack followed by the sound of wood splintering. By the time anyone can react, the boat is destroyed, its contents dumped into the freezing water. You salvage what you can, but most of it is lost. Food, equipment, supplies, gone. The remaining 2 boats are more crowded now, riding even lower in the water. You're down to about 30 days worth of food for 25 men. 30 days to reach Cape Sabine, find the full caches and resupply. If the caches are there, if they have enough food, if you can find them. Doubts multiply. You see it in the men's faces, in the way conversations die off into silence. No one wants to voice their fears, but everyone's thinking the same thing. We might not make it. The weather worsens. Storms blow in from the north, whipping the water into a frenzy. Waves crash over the sides of the boats, soaking you to the skin. The water is so cold it feels like being stabbed with thousands of tiny knives. You bail frantically, throwing the water out as fast as it comes in, knowing that if the boat swamps you have maybe 3 minutes before hypothermia kills you. During one particularly bad storm, you're swept onto a large ice floe. There's no choice but to ride it out. The floe drifts south for days, carrying you along. You have no control, no way to steer. You're at the mercy of wind and current. At least you're making progress, someone jokes weakly. No one laughs. 51 days after leaving Fort Conger, you reach Cape Sabine. It's October the 21st. The landscape is barren and windswept. Just rock and ice under a grey sky. But somewhere here, there should be emergency caches. Food and fuel left by the supply ships that couldn't reach Fort Conger. Enough to keep you alive until spring. You search desperately, spreading out along the shore. Hours pass. Then someone shouts. They've found something. You run over, your heart pounding, your breath coming in gasps. There's a pile of crates, partially covered in snow. You pry them open with shaking hands. Inside, canned meat, biscuits, tea, a small amount of fuel. You do a quick inventory. Maybe 40 days worth of food for 25 men. Maybe 40 days. And rescue won't come until next June at the earliest. That's 8 months away. You need supplies for 240 days, and you have food for 40. The math is simple and brutal. Most of you are going to die here. You build Camp Clay over the next few days. It's not really a camp, more like a desperate pile of materials offering minimal protection from the elements. You overturn one of the boats and use it as a roof. You pile stones into rough walls. You stretch canvas over the gaps. It's barely enough to keep the wind out. It's certainly not enough to keep the cold out, but it's all you have. Inside, the space is cramped and dark. 25 men packed together, lying on the frozen ground, surrounded by the last of your supplies. The smell is immediate and overwhelming. Unwashed bodies, damp wool, fear. You try to breathe through your mouth to avoid tasting it, but that just makes your throat dry. Lieutenant Greely institutes strict rationing. A few ounces of food per man per day, barely enough to keep you alive, not enough to thrive or even maintain your current weight and strength, just enough to prolong the dying. You eat your portion slowly, trying to make it last. A bite of biscuit that's more mould than grain, a sliver of canned meat that tastes of tin and desperation. It sits in your stomach like a stone and heavy and unsatisfying. An hour later, you're hungry again. The first snow falls in early November. It buries Camp Clay in white, muffling the world, making everything quieter. You might think snow would provide insulation, would help keep you warm. It doesn't. The cold just presses harder, finds new ways in. You lie in your spot, wrapped in whatever you can find, and you shiver, always shivering. Darkness returns in mid-November. Not the gradual dimming of sunset, but the total absence of light that characterizes the Arctic winter. You light a candle sometimes, just to see faces, but fuel is precious. Most of the time you sit in darkness and listen to the wind and the sound of men breathing around you. This is where time stops meaning anything. Days blend into each other. Weeks disappear. You exist in a state of semi-consciousness. Not quite asleep. Not quite awake. Just enduring. Waiting for something to change. Hoping that change doesn't mean death. But death is coming. You can feel it circling, patient and inevitable. It's just a question of who it takes first and how many it takes before spring. The first death comes quietly. Private Joseph Ellison, whose hands and feet were already damaged by frostbite, simply stops responding one morning in late January. You notice because he's lying near you, and his breathing has changed. It's shallow and irregular, with long pauses between breaths that make you think each one is the last. Then he takes another, rasping and wet. Someone touches his shoulder. No response. They shake him gently. Nothing. He's gone, or so far gone it makes no difference. By afternoon he's dead. You help carry his body outside and it's shockingly light. He couldn't have weighed more than 70 pounds at the end, all the muscle and fat burned away until there was nothing left but skeleton and skin. You lay him on the rocks outside Camp Clay. The ground is too frozen to dig, so he'll stay there, preserved by the cold until spring. If spring comes, if anyone survives to see it. More deaths follow. 1 per week at first, then 2, then more. If the pattern is always the same, a man grows quiet, stops eating, stops moving. His eyes take on a distant, glassy quality. He's already leaving, pulling back from the world. Then one morning he simply doesn't wake up. You learn to recognise the signs, the way someone's face changes, the flesh sinking further, the skin taking on a waxy, yellowish tint, the way their breathing becomes laboured, their eyes sunken so deep you can barely see them. When you notice these things, you know. This person has days, maybe a week, not more. Hunger is the worst part, worse even than the cold. The cold you can almost get used to, can almost adapt to, but hunger is relentless. It gnaws at you constantly, a pain that never eases, never allows you a moment of peace. Your stomach cramps and twists, your body consumes itself, burning muscle for fuel, shutting down non-essential systems to keep your heart beating. You think about food constantly, vivid, detailed fantasies about meals you've had, meals you've imagined, meals that exist only in your hunger-addled mind. A roast chicken with crispy skin, mashed potatoes drowning in butter, fresh bread still warm from the oven, apple pie with a flaky crust. The fantasies are so real you can sell them. Taste them. Then you wake up and you're back in the freezing darkness of Camp Clay with nothing but a tiny portion of rancid seal meat to eat. Some men talk about food in their sleep, describing meals in excruciating detail. You lie there listening, your mouth watering, hating them and envying them at the same time. At least in sleep they get to eat. Your own dreams are darker. Dreams of being chased, of falling, of drowning in black water. You're grateful. When you wake up, even though waking means returning to hunger, by February you're eating things that would have been unthinkable months ago. Strips of seal skin boiled until they're soft enough to chew, though they never really soften. They're like rubber. It's tough and flavourless, but there's something to put in your stomach. Lichen scraped from rocks, bitter and gritty. Boot leather cut into small pieces and stewed. Even the leather tastes like nothing, like chewing on old shoe sole, but you force it down because the alternative is death. Someone finds a bit of seaweed frozen into the ice. You boil it into a grey sludge that smells like rot and tastes worse. But it's calories, it's survival. You eat it and try not to vomit it back up because vomiting means losing precious energy, precious moisture. Scurvy appears in March, your gums swell and turn black. They bleed when you touch them, leaving a metallic taste of blood in your mouth. Your teeth loosen. When you run your tongue over them, they shift in their sockets, and you know it's only a matter of time before they feel they fall out. One man's teeth do fall out, all of them in the span of a week. He can't chew anymore, can only swallow small pieces of whatever soft food you can find. He starves faster after that. Your joints swell too, hot and painful. Your knees are grotesque, bulging under your thin skin like someone had shoved rocks under there. Every movement sends sharp, stabbing pain through your body. You learn to lie very still, minimizing movement, trying to conserve energy. But lying still means your muscles atrophy faster, means you lose strength faster, means death comes sooner. You're trapped in a downward spiral and there's no way to stop it. The food thefts begin in earnest sometime in April. Someone is stealing from the communal supply, taking more than their share. It's impossible to know who. In the darkness and confusion of Camp Clay, anyone could be the thief. Suspicion falls on everyone and no one. Lieutenant Greely calls meetings, demands confessions, no one admits anything. The thefts continue. Men who were barely surviving start dying faster. Every stolen bite of food is a death sentence for someone else. The tension becomes unbearable. You watch the other men constantly, looking for signs of guilt. You hide your own tiny rations, tucking them close to your body so no one can steal them while you sleep. But you sleep fitfully, jolting awake at every sound, convinced someone is reaching for your food. In early June, Private Charles Henry is caught stealing. Not for the first time, he's been suspected before, but this time there's no doubt. He's found with food that doesn't belong to him, and there's no explanation he can give. Greely announces the sentence, execution. It's the only way to stop the thefts, he says, the only way to save the rest of you. Henry begs, he pleads, he promises never to do it again, but his promises mean nothing anymore. They take him, outside. You hear the gunshot, sharp and final in the still air. Then silence. You tell yourself it was necessary, that without discipline you'll all die, but deep down you're not sure. You're not sure of anything anymore. June continues and the deaths accelerate. Men who've held on for months suddenly give up. One morning you wake up surrounded by bodies. Some are dead, some are close enough that it makes no difference. The line between living and dead has become blurry. You're not sure which side you're on anymore. Your own body is failing. Your heart beats irregularly, fluttering and skipping in your chest. Your vision fades in and out. You can't stand without getting dizzy. Even sitting up is an effort that leaves you gasping. You lie on the frozen ground and wonder if you'll see another day. You're not sure you want to. Death would be easier. Death would mean no more hunger, no more cold, no more suffering. Death would be rest. But some stubborn part of you refuses to give up. some deep primal drive to survive that won't quit even when quitting would be merciful. So you keep breathing, keep your heart beating, keep existing day by day, hour by hour. And then, on June 22nd, someone shouts, "A ship! There's a ship on the horizon." You don't believe it. You've hallucinated before, but others see it too. It's real. It's coming. The ship is called the Bear. It carries Captain Winfield Scott Schley and a crew of healthy, well-fed men who look at you with horror. You try to stand to greet them properly, but your legs won't hold you. You collapse and someone catches you before you hit the rocks. You're saved. After 19 deaths, after months of suffering that should have killed you all, rescue has finally arrived. But as they carry you onto the ship, as you feel the solid deck beneath you and smell the scent of real food cooking below, you realise something. The part of you that survived, it isn't the same part that started this journey. That person died somewhere between Fort Conger and Camp Clay. What remains is something different. Something harder, darker, emptied out. You survived, but survival came at a cost you're only beginning to understand. The journey home on the Bear takes weeks, but you barely notice. Time has become meaningless, elastic, stretching and compressing in ways that don't follow the rules anymore. Sometimes you're on the ship, surrounded by concerned sailors and the smell of food you can't yet eat. Sometimes you're back at Camp Clay, listening to the wind tear at the canvas walls. The transition between them is seamless, and you're never quite sure which is real. The ship's doctor visits you daily. He's a young man with kind eyes that can't quite hide his horror at what you've become. He examines you gently, checking your pulse, your breathing, the frostbitten tissue on your extremities that's turned black and smells of rot. He cleans your wounds as best he can, though there's only so much that can be done. Some damage is permanent. They feed you broth at first, just broth, because your stomach can't handle real food yet. You sip it slowly, and even that thin liquid makes your stomach cramp and twist. You've been empty for so long that your body has forgotten how to process nutrition, but gradually, painfully, you relearn. A pound at a time, you begin to come back. Not all the way. You'll never be what you were, but enough that you start to resemble a living person, rather than a walking corpse. Listen to the creak of the ship, the sound of water against the hull, the distant calls of seabirds as you approach land. These sounds should comfort you. They're normal sounds, human sounds, but they feel alien, as if you're hearing them through a thick wall that separates you from the world. One of the survivors dies during the voyage. You knew him at Fort Conger, back when he was a whole person with a name and a personality. Now he's just a shell that finally emptied out completely. They sew him into canvas and commit him to the sea. You watch the bundle slide over the side and disappear into the dark water, and you feel nothing. You've seen too much death. One more doesn't register. The ship reaches Newfoundland in July. News of your rescue has preceded you, and a crowd waits at the dock, reporters with notepads ready, photographers with their cameras set up, curious onlookers hoping for a glimpse of the survivors. You're carried off the ship on a stretcher, and the noise of the crowd hits you like a physical blow. Questions shouted from every direction. What was it like? How many died? Is it true about the cannibalism? Did you really execute a man? You close your eyes and try to block it out, but the voices push through, demanding answers you don't have the strength to give. They take you to a hospital. Clean white sheets, a real bed with a mattress, windows that let in natural light. It should feel like luxury after months of sleeping on frozen ground, but it just feels wrong. Too soft, too bright, too coarse, too far from the reality you've been living. The nurses are efficient and professional, but you see the way they look at you whenever they think you're not watching. The mixture of pity and revulsion. You know what you look like. Skeletal, scarred, more corpse than man. You don't blame them for their reactions. You'd look at yourself the same way if you could stand to look in mirrors anymore. The newspapers have a field day. The Greely Expedition becomes national news, front page headlines for weeks. They call you heroes at first, men who survived impossible odds, examples of American perseverance and courage. But then the darker stories emerge, reports of cannibalism, bodies found mutilated, of flesh stripped from the bones. The reporters dig into the details with ghoulish enthusiasm, demanding to know what really happened at Camp Clay. Were the dead eaten? Who did it? Who knew? Who participated? Lieutenant Greely faces the worst of it. He holds press conferences, his face grey and tired, his voice strained as he denies the allegations. The bodies were mutilated by animals, he claims. By foxes and birds. Not by men, never by men. But the evidence is there. The knife marks on bones. The systematic way of flesh was removed. The fact that no foxes or birds were ever seen near Camp Clay. The truth hovers unspoken in every interview, every article, every conversation. Men did this. Starving, desperate men did what they had to do to survive. You're asked about it too. Reporters corner you at the hospital. Their questions pointed and relentless. You say nothing. What could you say? You don't remember everything from those final weeks. Hunger and cold and exhaustion blurred your memories, turned them into fragments that don't quite fit together. Maybe that's a mercy. Maybe it's a curse. You're not sure. The army conducts an investigation. Officers in clean uniforms sit in comfortable rooms and ask questions about decisions made in frozen hell. They ask about the execution of Private Henry. They ask about the rationing system. They ask about discipline and leadership and whether proper military protocol was followed. The questions feel absurd. Protocol? In a place where men were dying by the week, where the choice was between executing a thief or letting everyone starve, what protocol exists for that? What manual covers that situation? But the investigation continues anyway, because the army needs answers, needs someone to blame or exonerate. Eventually they conclude that Greely did the best he could under impossible circumstances. The execution was justified. The rationing was appropriate. The deaths were tragic but unavoidable. The verdict feels hollow. 19 men died. No amount of justification or exoneration changes that fact. Recovery is slow and incomplete. You gain weight gradually, filling out your skeletal frame until you start to look almost human again. The doctors amputate the frostbitten parts of your fingers and toes. Clean cuts in a sterile room that feel like violations. You learn to walk again, to use your hands, to perform basic tasks despite the missing digits. Physical therapy is torture. Every exercise hurts. Every movement reminds you of how much you've lost. But you persist because the alternative is giving up, and something in you still refuses to give up. That stubborn core that kept you alive in the Arctic won't let you quit now. Months pass. You're discharged from the hospital with a small pension and a handful of medals that feel meaningless. You're supposed to go back to normal life now, supposed to move on as if the last 3 years never happened. But how do you do that? How do you live in a world that feels impossibly soft and safe when you've seen what you've seen, when you know what humans are capable of when pushed to their limits? You try, you find a job, find a place to live, you go through the motions of normal life. But you're hollow inside, emptied out by the Arctic, and nothing seems to fill you back up. Food tastes like ash. Warmth doesn't reach you. You lie in your bed at night with blankets piled high and you're still cold. The nightmares come every night. Vivid, terrible dreams where you're back at Camp Clay, back in the darkness and hunger. You wake up screaming, your heart pounding, your sheets soaked with sweat. The terror doesn't fade even after you realise where you are. It stays with you, a constant companion. Years pass. The Greely Expedition fades from public consciousness, replaced by new scandals and tragedies. People forget, as people always do, but you don't forget. You can't. It's written into your body, carved into your mind, a permanent scar that never fully heals. Lieutenant Greely goes on to a distinguished career. He's promoted eventually, recognised for his service, honoured for his achievements. The scientific data you collected is studied and praised. The expedition is considered a success by historians, his contributions to polar science deemed valuable. You find that absurd, 19 men dead and they call it a success. But history doesn't care about individuals. It cares about results, about data, about knowledge gained. The cost in human lives is just a footnote. You attend a reunion once, years later. The surviving members of the expedition gather in a hotel ballroom, older now, greyer, but recognisable. You see Brainard, Greely, the others. You shake hands, exchange pleasantries, try to make small talk, but there's a weight in the room, a shared understanding of things that can never be spoken about. You all survived, but pieces of you died in the Arctic, and those pieces can never be recovered. Someone proposes a toast. To absent friends, to the men who didn't make it home. You raise your glass and drink, and the whiskey tastes like nothing. Late at night, when you're alone, you sometimes wonder if you actually survived. Maybe you died at Camp Clay with the others. Maybe this whole life, the rescue, the recovery, the years that followed, is just a dying dream. Your brain's last desperate attempt to create meaning before shutting down completely. It would explain why nothing feels real anymore. Why you move through the world like a ghost, observing but never quite participating. Why you're always cold, always hungry, always waiting for something terrible to happen. But morning comes, as it always does. The sun rises, the world continues, and you go on, carrying your ghosts, surviving long after survival stopped being a blessing and became just another form of endurance. The Arctic took 19 lives. But in a way, it took all 25. 6 bodies came home. But the men who went north in 1881, full of hope and ambition, and the certainty that human will could conquer any obstacle, those men never came back. They're still there, frozen on the rocks of Cape Sabine, waiting for a rescue that arrived too late. You're an old man now. The calendar says decades have passed since Cape Sabine, since Camp Clay, since the darkness and hunger and death. Your hair is white, your body is bent and aching. The missing fingers and toes throb in weather changes, phantom pain from flesh long gone. You should have found peace by now, you should have moved on, but the Arctic doesn't let go. Not really, not ever. You sit in your chair by the window and watch the world pass by. It's summer, warm and bright, and people walk past in light clothes, complaining about the heat. You're wearing a wool sweater and you're still cold, always cold. The warmth never reaches you anymore, never penetrates to the frozen core that formed somewhere between Fort Conger and rescue. Sometimes young people come to interview you. Journalists, historians, students writing papers. They sit with their notepads and their eager faces, and they ask questions about the expedition. What was it like? How did you survive? What was the worst moment? Can you describe the conditions? You answer their questions, but you're never sure if you're telling them what really happened, or just repeating the story you've told so many times it's become smooth and polished, worn down like a stone in a river. The truth is slippery. Memory is unreliable. The things you remember most clearly are probably the things you've reconstructed from other people's accounts, from newspaper articles, from your own repeated tellings. But some things you know are real. The cold, the hunger, the sound of the wind. Those things are carved into you too deeply to be false. Lieutenant Greely died years ago, an old man with a chest full of medals and a reputation mostly restored. He was even awarded the Medal of Honor late in life, recognition for a lifetime of service to his country. You attended his funeral standing in the back and you listened to people praise his leadership, his courage, his accomplishments. No one mentioned Camp Clay. No one mentioned the execution, the starvation, the bodies piled on the rocks. Those details have been polished away by time, leaving only the heroic narrative. You're not sure how you feel about that. Maybe it's for the best. Maybe the full truth is too complicated, too dark, too filled with moral ambiguity to be useful to anyone. People want simple stories, heroes and villains, triumph and tragedy. They don't want the messy reality of desperate men making impossible choices with no good options. But you remember the messy reality. You lived it, and that knowledge sits heavy inside you, a weight you've carried for decades and will carry until you die. Other survivors have passed on too, one by one. Brainard died last year. You read about it in the newspaper. He'd gone on to a successful military career, retiring as a brigadier general. The obituary mentioned the Greely Expedition, the record for Farthest North, the rescue. It made everything sound noble and heroic. You wondered if Brainard felt that way, or if he too carried ghosts that never quite left him alone. You're one of the last now, maybe the last. You've lost track of whether anyone else is still alive. Soon there will be no one left who remembers what it was really like, who can speak from experience rather than from history books. The story will become fixed, frozen in amber, interpreted and reinterpreted by people who weren't there. That thought bothers you more than you expected, not because you want fame or recognition, but because without witnesses the truth becomes whatever people want it to be. The suffering becomes abstract, sanitized. The 19 men who died become statistics, names on a list, rather than real people who starved and froze and died in terror and pain. You knew them. You remember their faces, their voices, the small things that made them individuals rather than just numbers. Private Ellison, who lost his hands and feet but held on for months anyway. Sergeant Cross, who died first and maybe luckiest, before the worst of the starvation. Private Henry, who was executed for stealing food, who begged for his life before they took him outside. Those men deserve to be remembered as people, not just as footnotes to a story about exploration and survival. But who will remember them when you're gone? Who will tell their stories? History is written by the survivors, and soon there will be no survivors left. You think about this more and more as you feel your own body failing. Your heart is weak, irregular. Your breathing is laboured. The doctors say you've done remarkably well for someone who endured what you did, but they can't hide the truth. You're dying. The Arctic didn't kill you then, but it's killing you now, slowly taking you apart piece by piece. You're not afraid. Death lost its terror somewhere in the darkness of Camp Clay. You've been so close to it, so intimate with it, that it feels almost familiar now. When it comes, you'll greet it like an old acquaintance. Late at night, when you can't sleep, you sometimes close your eyes and let yourself remember. Not the sanitized version you tell interviewers, the real version. The one that still has the power to make your heart race and your breath come short. You remember the smell of Camp Clay, unwashed bodies, and seal oil and rot. You remember the taste of boiled leather, rubber and foul, but something to chew. You remember the sound of men dying, the wet rasp of their final breaths. You remember the weight of bodies as you dragged them outside, the way they froze solid within hours, the way their eyes stayed open, staring at nothing. You remember the hunger. God, the hunger. A pain that consumed you, that made you think about food every waking moment and dream about it when you slept. You remember chewing on things that weren't food just to have something in your mouth, something to trick your body into thinking it was being nourished. You remember the cold, not surface cold, not the kind you can fix with another layer. Deep cold, bone cold, the kind that settles into your core and never leaves. You remember lying on frozen ground and feeling the heat leak out of your body, feeling your muscles seize and your joints stiffen, feeling yourself slowly becoming ice. You remember the darkness, 5 months without sun, living in a tiny shelter where you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. The darkness wasn't just absence of light, it was presence of something else, something heavy and oppressive that pressed on your mind and made you question whether the sun had ever existed or if you'd just imagined it. And you remember the moment of rescue. The sight of the bear on the horizon, the way hope surged in your chest, painful and overwhelming after so many months of despair. The feeling of being carried onto the ship, of being held by hands that were strong and warm and capable. The taste of real broth, the first real food in months. The realization that you'd survived, that against all odds and expectations, you'd made it. That moment should have been triumph, should have been joy, and maybe it was for a few minutes, but it was also the beginning of understanding what survival had cost you. You didn't just lose weight and fingers and toes in the Arctic, you lost something essential, something that made you fully human, the ability to feel soul. The ability to take comfort in warmth and food and shelter. The ability to believe that the world is fundamentally good, that suffering has meaning, that human beings will help each other in times of need. You learned that none of those things are true. The world is indifferent. Suffering has no meaning beyond the fact of suffering, and when pushed hard enough, humans will do terrible things to survive. That knowledge has poisoned every day since. You can't enjoy a meal without remembering hunger, can't feel warmth without remembering cold, can't form close bonds with people because you know that in the right circumstances, anyone will betray anyone, that loyalty and friendship dissolve in the face of starvation. You became hollow at Cape Sabine, and you never filled back up. But maybe, in the end, that's the real story of the Greely Expedition. Not the heroic narrative of exploration and achievement, not the scientific data collected and the records broken. Those things matter to history, but they don't capture the human truth. The truth is simpler and darker. 25 men went into the Arctic. 6 came out alive, but none of them really survived. They brought their bodies home, but they left their souls on the ice. You've spent decades trying to articulate this, trying to make people understand, but words fail. Language can't capture what it means to be so hungry you'd consider eating the dead, to be so cold you'd welcome death as warmth, to be so desperate you'd steal food from dying men. Those experiences exist outside normal human comprehension. You can describe them, but you can't make people feel them. And without feeling them, without understanding them viscerally, the story remains just a story. Interesting, perhaps. Dramatic, but not real. You're tired now, so tired. Your body is ready to give up, ready to stop fighting. You've held on for decades, carrying your ghosts, bearing witness to something most people can't even imagine. But the weight is becoming too much. One night you dream about Camp Clay. You're back there, lying on the frozen ground, listening to the wind tear at the canvas. But this time it's different. This time you're not afraid. You're not fighting to survive. You're just there, present, accepting. The other men are there too. Not the skeletal, starving versions from the end, the healthy versions from before, from Fort Conger when hope still lived. They're sitting around, talking quietly, and when you join them, they make room, welcome you back. Ellison has his hands and feet. Cross is young and vital. Even Private Henry is there, no longer a thief, no longer executed, just another man trying to survive in an impossible place. Greely sits with them too, his face unlined, his eyes clear. No one speaks about what happened. There's no need. They all know, they all understand. They all carry the same scars, the same memories, the same hollow place inside where something essential used to be. You sit with them in the dream, and for the first time in decades you feel almost warm, almost at peace. When you wake, you're in your chair by the window. The sun is setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. It's beautiful, the kind of sunset that should make you feel something. But you're numb to beauty, have been since the Arctic taught you that beautiful places can be the most deadly. You close your eyes, your breathing is laboured, your heart struggling. You know this is the end. You can feel it coming, patient and inevitable, the way you felt it coming at Camp Clay, but this time without the terror. Your last thought, before the darkness takes you, is about the Arctic, about the ice and wind and endless cold, about the price you paid to survive, about the 19 men who didn't make it home. And then you think, maybe now, finally, you can join them. Maybe death will reunite you with the men who died on the ice, and together you can rest. The cold finally takes you. But this time you don't fight it. You let it come, let it wrap around you like a blanket, let it pull you down into the darkness. And somewhere, on a barren stretch of rock at Cape Sabine, the wind still howls. The ice still cracks and groans. The ghosts still wait, frozen in time, preserved by the cold. The Arctic never forgets, and now neither will you, because you're finally home.